here is the question. It says factor each and find all the roots. And then it gives you multiple choice. So this is really good news for you because you're like, oh, I can do that. So here's what I'm expecting. So here's the problem. 5x cubed minus 21x squared plus 4x. Hopefully you all can see that. I might write it a little darker for you because I know it's kind of dark in my house right now. So I want to see you factor this. So, I mean, even though it's written in factored form right here, there's a bunch of factors here. I still need to see it work. So the first thing you should notice is they all have an x. So we're going to factor out an x. 5x squared minus 21x plus 4. Now, this is a trinomial with a coefficient larger than 1, and you need to know how to factor this. And this is how I do it. I say what multiplies to 20 and then adds to the middle, negative 21. The two numbers that multiply to 20 but add to negative 21, you put them in parentheses. So let's see, what multiplies to 20 but adds to 21? Oh, 20 and 1. Oh, they both have to be negative. And then you put x here and x here. Well, because there's a 5 right here, you have to divide this by 5 and this by 5. If this was a 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. If this was a 4, same thing, okay? Now, if it can be divisible by 5, like this one right here, x minus 4 is what you would reduce it to. If it can't, if it's something like 1/5, you take this 5 and you bring it up next to the x. You bottom it up. So 5x minus 1. And then this x that you had factored out from the beginning, you just bring it down. Now that each one of them are equal to 0, you just set each one equal to 0. X equals 0, x minus 4 equals 0, and 5x minus 1 equals 0. And then you solve, you get a root of 0, a root of 4, and then a root of 1/5. Okay? So I need to see some work here that you know how to factor. Again, you might not factor my way. You might do like I've seen teachers do factor by grouping, but I know several of the methods, so I know how to look for work. How can you check this? You know how to check this, y'all. Zeros are x-intercepts. You could go onto Desmos right now, and I'm just going to show you. And go to graphing calculator, or in your graphing calculator, and type in the original 5x cubed minus 21x squared plus 4x. Well, look at there. There's a 0. It's 0. There's another 0. It's 0.2, which is equivalent to 1/5. And there's my other 0, 4. Okay, so I know we did it right. So that answer is, well, let's see, 0, 1/5, and 4, 0, 1/5, and 4. Not that bad, that one. Now let's look at how we factored it. X, 5 minus x, and x minus 4. It's this one because that one is not the correct answer, so A. All right, let's move on to 2. Find all the roots. X to the 4th minus 10x squared plus 25. Now this one, you can't go on to Desmos because you can even see you've got some i's, you got some square roots. I mean, you can maybe check it with the square roots, but this is what we talked about last class. This is a trinomial, but it has a degree 4. So it's going to have 4 roots, but it's still a trinomial, so I can still factor it. Instead of putting x and x here, I put x squared and x squared here. And what two numbers multiply to 25 but add to a negative 10? Well, that would be negative 5 and negative 5. And then once you get that, you just set each one equal to 0. It's called the zero product property. You set each product equal to 0. X squared equals 5. And then you take a square root. X equals plus or minus square root of 5. Remember, when you take a square root, you need a plus or minus. And x equals another plus or minus square root of 5. So what does that mean? Well, that means you have square root of 5 twice, or a multiplicity of 2. But you have a negative square root of 5. Multiplicity of 2 also, because it's over here and here. Multiplicity of 2. So this would be the answer C. What about this one? Find all the roots. Well, look at that. I've already factored it for you. How nice of me. So all you have to do is set each one equal to 0. X minus 3 equals 0. That's the first factor. X squared plus 9 equals 0. And x squared minus 3 equal to 0. So x equals 3. This one, x squared, bring over the 9 would be minus 9. Take a square root would be plus or minus the square root of 9 is 3, but the square root of negative 9 is 3i. And then this one, bring a 3 over, take a square root, plus or minus square root 3. So there's your answers. You need a 3, a positive 3i, a negative 3i. So let's see, it looks like it might be B, positive square root of 3 and a negative square root of 3. So there's the first page. If you can handle that, you'll be good to go. Let's go to the second page. So this says solve each equation by factoring. So I am going to need to see you factor number 4 again. Notice the problem with number 4, it's not set equal to 0. You always want to factor when it's set equal to 0. So that 5, I'm going to minus it over. And I'm going to have 5a squared minus 33a plus 18. And again, I have a trinomial. So I'm going to need to do some multiplying here. Think of two numbers that multiply. 5 times 18 is, ooh, I got to get my calculator out. I think it's 90. Double check. You are allowed a calculator on this portion, so that's good. 90. So multiplies to 90, but adds to a negative 33. Multiplies to 90, but adds to a 33. I'm going to go with probably 3 and 30. That would make a 90. 30 and 3, and they both would be negative. And then because this has a 5, divide by 5, divide by 5. And then if it divides a minus 6, which it does, this one doesn't, so bring that 5 in front of the a on this term. And then set each one of these equal to 0. A minus 6 equals 0. 5a minus 3, so a is 6. And then 5a equals 3a is 3/5. Do you see what I mean by work? I'm showing work. I'm showing the teacher that I know what I'm talking about. I know how to do these problems. Okay, can't just go to the calculator. Oh, I can easily go to the calculator. We've shown that. You need to actually show that you can factor. All right, then a couple of equation solving skills, because again, part of pre-calculus is knowing how to solve the equation. I'm going to try to bring this down a little bit so I can zoom in a little better. Solve each inequality. Okay, ooh, we got those inequalities again, so we need to be careful here. So first things first, you want to get that inequality by itself. So I'm going to minus the 10 over. So I would have the absolute value of 6x plus 9 is greater than 21. Now, if you remember when we solved inequalities, the first rule to solving inequalities is write it just like it is without the bars. So negative 6x plus 9 is greater than 21. Then write it again, flip the inequality, and change the sign. And then let's solve. So negative 6x minus the 9 over would be 12. Divide by negative 6. When you divide by a negative, it flips the inequality. So this becomes less than negative 2. There's one answer. Minus 9 over here would be negative 6x is less than negative 30. Divide by negative 6. Flip the inequality. X is greater than 5. That would be choice C. Here's a question again. Some of these are just as simple as I just want to see if you can solve equations. We're very important in pre-calc. This is not absolute values. These are parentheses, so you are going to want to distribute. So negative 20 minus 4n is less than positive 10 minus 10n. Get all your n's on one side and numbers to the other side. So if I add 10 over, I would have 6n. If I add 20 over, I would have 30. The less than. Adding and subtracting don't change the inequality. And then divide by 6, n is less than 5. I don't have to flip it. So the one that says n is less than 5 is C. All right, and another solving equation. One with fractions. Remember how to get rid of fractions. Excuse me. Best way to get rid of fractions is find common denominator. But honestly, before I do that, this 14/3, I'm going to distribute it first. I'm going to use my calculator to find out what 14 times 19 is. That's a big one. 266. So 14 times negative 19 is negative 266. 3 times 5 is 15. And then you have an n. 14/3 times 1 is 14/3. Equals negative 1526 over 15. Now, again, you want all of these to have a common denominator. The common denominator between 15, a 3, and a 15 is 15. So if you remember, what I do is I multiply each one by 15. Everything by 15. And then what that does is the 15 and 15 would cancel, and you'd be left with negative 266n. The 3 would cancel into the 15 5 times, and 5 times 14 is 70. And then this 15 and 15 cancel, and you're left with negative 1526. And now you have a simple equation, a one-step equation, well, two-steps equation to solve for. You just take negative 1526 and minus 70, which is negative 1596. And then divide that by negative 266. And all that to say n is 6. All right. Moving on. Now we're getting into some fun stuff here. It says, write the quadratic function in vertex form by completing the square. Ooh, I need to see that. Identify the vertex, the axis of symmetry, the max and the min value, the y-intercept, the x-intercepts, and sketch a graph. So the equation that they gave you was y equals x squared plus 4x minus 45. And you have to complete this square. Let me refresh you on how to complete the square. So you take the number and you bring it over with the y. So you would write y plus 45 and then go plus blank. Now, why did I call it plus 45? Because it changes a sign when it flips over. equals x squared plus 4x plus blank. Now what goes in that blank? Well, that's the completing of the square. It's half the middle squared, half of the middle term of this trinomial. So half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. You put a 4 here. Since we didn't factor anything out, put a 4 over here. So what do we have? Well, on this side, we have y plus 49. On this side, I have to write it in a factored perfect square form. And it's really, if you remember, the trick is whatever you took a half of, you write it as x plus 2 squared. Think about it. X plus 2 times another x plus 2 would be x squared plus 4x plus 4. Boil it out. It works. Now take that positive 49 and just bring it back over. And make sure you write it as minus. That is now what's called vertex form. So what would be the vertex? Well, the vertex, this is your HK, and you have to change the sign of H because it looks positive too. So your vertex would be -2, -49, HK. So if I'm looking at my choices, -2, -49 is either A or choice D. So that's good. Got a 50-50 now. Let's answer the other question. What was the axis of symmetry? If you know the vertex, you know the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry, it's equivalent to the equation x equals -b over 2a. So you could go up here and go, this is your number, this is your B, this is your A, that's your C, A, B, and C. But honestly, it's just that right there. X equals -2, that's your axis of symmetry. Well, they both have -2. So now, okay, what are we going to do now? Well, we're going to identify, let's say, a y-intercept. Y-intercept is best to identify from the foiled out version, not from the intercept, from the vertex form. This right here, it's your y-intercept, -45. So that helps me out here because this says it has a y-intercept of -53, and this one has the -45. So I know the answer is going to be D, and then all you have to do is just do a sketch of it, which again, you get a calculator for. And so you can go to Desmos, and I don't care how you type it in, you can type the original in. X squared plus 4x minus 45. So you can see it's pretty low down there. And by the way, I think if you click right there, it's going to tell you what your minimum value is. Your minimum value right there is at -2, -49. The minimum value, though, is the y value, the -49 value. Other things you would know, just going back to all the stuff you remember. This tells you you've been shifted down 49 and then left 2. Remember that? If you're outside the parent, you go down. If you're inside the parent, you go right or left. So you went left 2, and then you can even go just down 49. I didn't attach a graph, so. And that's where your vertex is. Honestly, if you have that much information for me, you can realize that the correct answer would be D itself. Probably just from the y-intercept, you could see the only y-intercept that has a -45 was this one. But you still have to show the completing of the square. Okay, has to be done. That's part of this course. Okay, identify domain and range of each function. We've talked about this again. Domain is how wide, range is how tall. How wide and how tall. This is a square root function. Again, you more than welcome to use your calculator on this section right here. But you know what this does. This plus 3 means it goes up 3. This plus 1 means that it goes left 1. So if I were to just sketch it out, 1, 2, 3, and left 1, I would start here, and then it's a square root. It shoots over to the right. So my domain, how wide is this thing? How wide is this thing going to get? Well, it's going to start at -1, and then it's going to keep going that way along the x-axis. So my domain is for values that are greater than -1. So that would be choice A or choice C. My range, how tall is this thing getting? Well, it starts here on the height of 3. So it's going to go 3 on up. So all my y values have to be bigger than 3, not less than 3. This one says less than or equal to 3. So my choice is A. All right, same thing for number 10. I have my graph, my x minus 4. I'm going to go to the right 4, draw it and shoot out. And so what's my domain? How wide is this thing getting? Well, it's going from 4 on the x, and it's all the numbers greater than 4. So x is greater than 4. This one says x is greater than -4. All reals, no. So we already know this is the answer, and we can just check to see that the range is correct. Or is my range 0 values and greater? Yes. Values greater than 0. So a couple of domain questions right there. And then your last 2 questions on the calculator part. Find the domain and range of a quadratic. This one, I mean, you should just know parabolas. And this is a parabola, x squared minus 8x plus 12. I mean, you can put this into Desmos, which I'm going to do. X squared minus 8x minus 12. You have 4. Oh, it's plus 12. I wonder. Oh, there we go. Let's see, my minimum is 4, -4. And I'm going through x-intercepts of 6 and 2. And I'm down here at -4. There we go. Just trying to graph it real quick for you. So how wide is this thing getting? In a parabola, the domain of a parabola will always be all reals. It's going to get really, 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 really wide the whole time. So I know my choice is going to be then the ones that have from -infinity to infinity. Not that one. The range, how tall is this thing getting? Well, its lowest value is -4, and then it just keeps going up. Now, I will tell you, this is written incorrectly. I should have had a bracket here, but the problem is it wasn't letting me do brackets because the way the computer generator was generating it, you should see it's a pain. So these will be written as like x is greater than, -4, y's are greater than -4. So that's what will happen here. But the correct answer on this one is C, even though there should be a bracket there because you are equal to -4 and then all the values on up. All right, and last but not least, what's the domain and range of 5 halves x minus 6? 5 halves x minus 6. You really should know that this is going to make a linear line, but we'll put it into the calculator anyway. So like I said, I know you get a calculator. 5 halves x and then minus 6. There we go. And you got zeros at 0, -6, and 2.4. So what is the range and what is the domain? How tall and how wide is this thing getting? Well, these are just going to keep getting and growing because it's a line. All lines have a domain and range of all reals. So I feel like I will give you, those are some gimme questions right there. Those are the first 12 questions of your test. I hope that makes sense.